Welcome to Digital Scrapbooking for Beginners. I'm Veronica Spriggs, and I'll be your guide as you enter the wonderful world of digital scrapbooking. I've been designing digital scrap kits as well as commercial use supplies for digital scrapbook designers for 11 years now, so I've gotten to learn a few things about digital scrapbooking, using a graphics editor, and I have to confess I've come a really long way when it comes to designing scrapbook pages, and I just love sharing my knowledge and passion with others. This tutorial is created specifically for beginners, and we will be using Photoshop elements. I typically use Photoshop, so if you already follow me and you're used to my Photoshop tutorials, you might find it difficult to follow along as some of the features are different. But if you know your way around Photoshop, you can still create this layout and you will just be using Photoshop's features instead. Because you are a beginner, I'd really love for you to follow along with me as we create this layout in Photoshop Elements. So I've included a free digital scrap kit for you to download. If you don't have Photoshop Elements, you can download a free 30-day trial of that, and I will include a link in the description. To download your free digital scrap kit, just follow these steps. There's a link to my Facebook page in the description. Click on it. You will be taken to my Facebook page. Be sure to like my page and click follow for all updates on new products, freebies, etc. And then feel free to invite a friend. Once you've done that, come over here to the navigation panel and then click on the welcome link. And here you will be taken to the download page. You'll see an option to download the PSD file that I used when creating this layout, and that can be helpful to help you break down the layout. So if you like, click on that link and download that. Then just scroll down. You'll see a link to subscribe to my newsletter, and that's another way to stay updated with what's going on with me. So feel free to subscribe if you like. And finally, you'll see the free download button. Just click on that to download your copy of Softest Summer Digital Page Kit. And one more thing before you go, I've also created a group. And if you click here, you'll see that Digital Scrapbooking for Beginners. Click on this link if you'd like to join this group. I've created specifically for anyone who's following this tutorial, so you can ask questions, get help, or share your projects that you're creating in Photoshop. So if you like, click on Join Group and we'll see you inside. Okay, now that you've got your files, you're ready to create your digital scrapbook layout in Photoshop Elements. So follow along with me. Let's take a closer look at our layout. You will see I've created a 3-photo page with frames on each photo. I've also included a few embellishments, applied some drop shadows, and added some text. So that's what we'll be doing. Feel free to use more or less photos, and once you've got the basics, you can create your layout your way. Let's get started. When you open Adobe Photoshop Elements, you will see this screen, and you'll have 3 options. One is to use your photo editor, your organizer, and if you've purchased Premiere Elements, you will have an option to edit video as well. Now, if you're like me and you're running on an older system, you will not be able to use a version of Photoshop Elements that's higher than version 14. I'm on a 32-bit PC, and all versions higher than this are required to have a 64-bit PC. So you want to make sure you know what your system's requirements are. So with that, let's get started. Click here on Photo Editor. Once you open Photoshop Elements, this is what your workspace will look like. Now, to help you work with your projects a little more efficiently, I like to customize my workspace, and here is how I'll do it. Go up here to Window, and some things that you're definitely going to want to have open are layers. Now, everything that is composed of a layout is created in a layer. So it's very important to learn how to work with your layers panel. Next, I like to have open my navigator. This is very handy for navigating your document, and it's a must-have for me. So I'll go ahead and open that up. And finally, I like to open my history panel. And this allows me to back up or undo as I need to. Now we'll come over here to our layers panel and we'll click on panel options. And here you can see that I have this set to large thumbnail, and I also have it set to layer bounds. Now what the layer bounds will do, it gives you a really clear view of the layer that you're working on because it shows basically only what is active on that layer as opposed to showing you a bunch of blank space. So you want to go ahead and click on that and then just check OK. And then down here, you'll see you have your layers, your effects, graphics, favorites, and more. And over here is where you'll have your photo bin. We're going to be using that a lot because that's where our files will live inside the editor. So I make sure I have that checked. And then to begin, we're going to create a new document. So we'll go to File, New, Blank File. And then we want to go here and you will see that Elements has created a default for scrapbooking because a lot of scrapbookers love to use Photoshop Elements. Go figure. Okay, so what they have here is typically you have a 12 by 12 inch. So that's 12 inches by 12 inches. And if you change this here, you could see it's 3600 by 3600 pixels. So it doesn't matter, whichever you prefer to work in. And the resolution should always be set to 300. And this is imperative if you plan to print your documents out. And this was set to white, which would give you a locked white background, but I always set my background to transparent. It's just a preference, but you know, if you don't want to use transparent, you don't have to. You can leave it at white. You can leave it at, you can even set it your own custom background color. So I'll click OK. And now we'll need to bring in our files. So to do that, we'll go to File, Open. And here are the files that I'll be working with. From the Softest Summer page kit, I've selected 3 papers that I like and a few embellishments and 3 photos that I'm going to insert into my layout. So I'm just going to click here, hold down my mouse, and select and drag all of those and then just click Open. And you will see they all begin to open here in my photo bin. Then I'll click here on the document because that's the one I'm working on, this blank one. And I like to click on Show Selected Files in Organizer. So this is the file that I'm working on and I'm going to keep that open. The very first thing that I'm going to do is drag in my first paper. So I'll just click on it, holding down my mouse. And then I'll just drag that in there. And then my next paper, I'll click and hold, drag it up in here. Actually, that's not the paper that I wanted, so I'll just go to Edit, Undo, and that's also Control Z or Command Z on a Mac. I want to use this paper instead, so I'll click on it and hold it down and drag it into place. And then what I'm going to do is using my Move tool, I will just drag this layer over here to about right there. It's a little bit less than halfway. And then you can either go over here and right click and duplicate this layer, or you can just drag it in again. It's probably quicker just to duplicate it. So we'll just duplicate that layer. Click OK. And then we're going to move it down to about right there. And finally, we will click on our last paper and drag it in. Oops, I did not mean to do that. So I can just go here and click on this layer and then hit the delete key. Or I could Control Z or Command Z to undo. But I'll just delete it. Do you want it to permanently delete it? Yes. And I usually click on Don't Show That Again. But if you don't feel confident, then just click yes every time. So this is the paper that I want, so I'm just going to click on it and drag it in there. and I'm going to position it right about here. Okay, now we're ready to begin adding our photos. So what I did to add my photos is first I'm going to frame them. So you want to come over here to this little icon that says graphics and click on it. And then you will see this really neat editor opens up. And inside here, you have all different types of frames. You can just scroll down here and you can see there's all different types of frames. Some of them even apply different effects on your photos, like they have filters built right in. If you come up here to this little drop down arrow, you can see that you can change that from frames to backgrounds, graphics, shapes, text, etc., etc., etc. And have fun playing with those things. I'm sure you will. And then I'll just drag my scroll bar and scroll down until I find the files I want. And what I'm using is this file right here, Basic White. And you can see that's Basic White at 10 pixels. I'm also going to use Basic White at 20 pixels. So if you hover over this, it'll tell you exactly what it's going to do. For instance, if I come down here, it'll say color tint blue fade out. So that is a frame, but it's also going to add a tint to your photo. Now, one thing you want to be sure of is that you're connected to the internet in order to use these files, because what it's going to do is actually download them. You can see it's downloading the content. So if you're not connected to the internet, you won't be able to use these. And then it tells you exactly what to do here. Now you can use your transform tool to change the size of this. And I'm going to make this just a little bit more squared. And then you see that little check mark. It'll say, do you like that? Yes or no. If you like it, you click the green check. If not, you click this little circle here that says cancel the operation. And that looks good, so I'll keep it. Then I'll come here and I'll add my next photo, which is going to be the 20 pixel Basic White. When you're using your transform tool, you want to make sure that you have constrained proportions checked. That way you're going to be able to drag this out evenly. So I'll just come here. I like the size of that. And then I will say yes. And then finally, we're going to add one more with a 10 pixel frame. But this time I'm going to spread it like that a little bit more. And click check. Now we're going to come back over to our layers panel. And you see we have our 3 frames. I'm going to select all 3 of these frames. And to do that, I just hold down the control key and click on each one. And I'm going to transform them all in size because I took up a little bit too much space. So with all my layers selected, I just use the transform tool and just drag them a little bit more to size. And when I'm happy with that, I click OK. Okay, now you can either click here to add photos, which you can see I clicked that and it opened up. And then I can just select a photo and choose place. Or I can come right back here to my photo bin and drag my photos into place. So I'm going to add this photo here. So we're going to start here. I'm going to click on this layer. And then I'm going to grab this photo and just drag it right there and watch what happens. It drags your photo right into place. And then you can use this little arrow here to make it smaller or larger. And I like it just like that, so I'm going to leave it as is. When you're happy with that, click the little green arrow to apply the effect. Then I come over here to my next photo, and you know that you've selected the right photo when you see these little bounding boxes around it. So I'll go back over here to my photo bin, and this time I'm going to grab this photo and drag it right into place. Let Photoshop Elements do its magic, and voila, it's added our photo. Next, we'll click on our final photo layer. I'm actually going to drag that down just a little bit more and apply that. Go back to our photo bin and add our final photo. Just click, hold down, and drag it into place. Okay, now we are almost ready to begin adding our embellishments. But before we do that, we're going to go over here to our effects panel. And we're going to add some drop shadows to our papers. So come back to our layer panel and we'll select our first paper. And we're going to add this drop shadow right here. Actually, I'm going to add this one. And then you can see I just dragged it into place. I did get a little warning notice about the file size, but I just clicked OK and it appears to be perfectly fine. And you can see I can either drag it over or I can right click and apply it to document. Okay, now I'm going to go over to layer panel and click on this one and do the same thing. And finally, we'll do it one more time to our last paper. Okay, now what I'm going to do is go up here with our layer style selected. I'm going to go up here to this little settings tool, and I'm just going to lower the opacity. And I have that set to 32%, and then just click OK. You can also change the distance a little bit. Okay, and I like that. So I have my size set to 76. My distance is at 24 and my opacity is set to 40. And then I'll just click OK. And we'll come here and do the same thing to each of those. We'll go to settings. Of course, I don't remember. I don't remember what I just said, so I'm just going to play with this until it looks pretty good. Okay, that's not too bad. So we're going to leave it at that. Now, one other thing that I like to do, and this is especially important when working with light colored scrap kits or scrapbooking papers. Sometimes I come in here and I change the color of the drop shadow so that it blends a little bit better. So I just use my eyedropper tool to click in here on the item, and then in the same color family, I go down to a darker color, and then I just change the color to that and leave it okay. Now, sometimes you might want to adjust the opacity after you've done that, but you know, that is a really good way. See how much easier it blends? It's much more pleasing to the eye. And then click OK. And then finally come over here. You see how I can turn that off and on with the eye? That just makes sure that I'm working on the right layer. So that's it, and I'll just come over here to my effects panel. Once again, click on the little settings tool, and I'm going to change the color again. And bring that out just a little bit more, like that. And that's all I'm going to do to that one, and then I'll just click OK. And now, since I've changed the color on all the other ones, you know what? I may as well go ahead and do it on this one too, because I'll probably like it better. So I'll just come up here to my little settings tool, click here, and this time I'm going to sample a color from this paper and set it like that. I'm going to increase the opacity just a little bit and then say OK. So that's done. I'll go over here and grab my move tool. I'm just going to move this photo up a little bit more. I like that positioning a little bit better. Okay, so now that that's done, it's time to add our embellishments. I can see all of my photos just by moving this slider like that. All right, so let's go ahead and add in our embellishments. I'm going to go here and add this flower. So we're going to just size this down a little bit. Happy with that? Click yes. Then we're going to come back over, add this one, and I'll just move this into place. Now, if you'll come over here, you'll see that Photoshop Elements inserts all of these files as a smart object. So the file is actually smaller on the page than it actually is on my hard drive. So I'm going to size this up a little bit, and I don't have to worry about losing quality because I'm only scaling the image up, but not past its original file size. And you can see you can double click or just click on that little arrow to apply. And then I will drag in this file. And this time I'm going to move it down below this photo. And then I'm going to duplicate that. And I'm going to move it down here. And then what I'm going to do is use my lasso tool. And I'm going to select out just a portion of this. And then I'm going to do layer via copy and turn off this layer so that now I have only these showing. I'll go back and grab my move tool, and I'm just going to rotate that a little bit. And then you can double click or click the little green arrow to apply that effect. And then I'm going to come up here to my little flower, right click, duplicate that layer, and bring that down here. Then I'm going to drag in this little element here, which is a parentheses or bracket. And I'm going to drag it beneath my pink flower and size it down to fit this photo. I'm going to size my flower down and position it into place. And finally, I didn't do this before, but now I'm going to add this little bow because I just love bows and I think they make everything look so much cuter. And bow can probably go on any layout and make it look spectacular. So I'm going to add that bow right there on top of that flower, size it down, and then click OK. And now I'm going to come here and add some drop shadows. So I'll go back to my effects panel, and this time we're going to use this very heavy drop shadow. And just click on it to apply it. We'll go to Style, and we'll change the color of that. We'll click here somewhere and change the color of that to about right there. We want lower the opacity so it's not so heavy. And then click OK. Okay, once I've applied my layer style and adjusted it just the way I like, I can come over here to my layers panel, click on it, right click, and choose copy layer style. Then I will hold down my shift key and select the bottommost layer of all my embellishments, and then that selects all the layers, and then I can right click and choose Paste Layer Style. And then I have applied that effect to all of my layers. I'll come down here to these as well, and this time I just hold down my Control key and just click on each layer that I would like to select, Control or Command key on a Mac, and then paste that layer style again. And finally, what I'll do is I'll come up here to this bracket, I'll click on Effects, then I'll go to Settings, and this time I just want to make this a little bit closer to the page. So I'll change the size as well as the distance, and then click OK. Okay, that looks absolutely great. So finally, we're going to add some text. Now, because we're going to be typing on the paper, we want the text to be below these little bubbles. So we'll come down here and click on our bottommost paper to activate that layer. We'll come over here, grab our text tool, and we just click here to begin typing. And you can see I have my font set to Rotarity. I think that's what that says, Rotarity Feminine. And here's all the fonts that I have active. So if you want to learn how to activate fonts in your program, just go to my tutorial, How to Activate Fonts, and you'll learn all about that. So with that done, I'm going to come here and change my color. Just grab the eyedropper tool, and then I'll click on a really nice green here. And you can change it. I think I'll grab that instead. And then I'm going to type. And I'll hit enter. Then I'll grab my type tool again. And this time I'm going to change the color to a nice bright pink. And click on that to apply. Now if I like, I can go ahead and move these bubbles around so that they're not so distracting to the text. And I'll put that right there. And our layout is finished, so I can go in here and zoom in on that with my navigator tool. And when you're zoomed in, you can see if you need to make any changes. And right here, my photo needs to come down just a little bit. So I'll grab my hand tool and drag my layout down. Now you notice that the hand tool, what it does is it moves the layout itself, or the document or file that you're working on, and not an actual object inside of the document. And so what I'll do is I'll double click here, and then you can see my editor opens up again, and then I will just make that a little bit larger so that it actually fills up the frame, and then click check or double click to apply that effect. And then once again, I'll zoom in and just make sure everything's well. Grab my hand tool. You can move the document around and see, do you want to make any changes? Does everything look good? And if it does, hooray, you've created a digital scrapbook layout. I know you're happy and proud of yourself. I'm sure it's beautiful. If you've joined my Facebook group, show it to me. I'd love to see what you've done. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoy this tutorial. Remember to share, like, and subscribe.